All right, everyone, it is another night in front of the microphone. Welcome to another episode of the Grayed Out Podcast. I'm Jay the Gray, and tonight we're in it. And tonight, again, if you've clicked on the title, you're probably going, what the heck is going on here? Maybe not. Maybe you're like, this guy again with his clickbait, whatever. Maybe you'll listen long enough. So tonight, we're going to get into this idea of vilifying everyone and making everyone into villains, and how that's probably not the best approach to making lasting change in a nation that needs some lasting change. So with that in mind, we're going to press forward with some specific ideas, some examples, and some of the things that are going on. And once again, I hope that you are here tonight ready to get grayed out. Let's dive in. Okay. Right now, we have found ourselves in a place societally where everyone is being made into a villain, or at least we feel like the only way we can have a good discussion, the only way we can have a good debate or win our argument, and maybe that's the problem, is we're looking to win our argument only. I think what more people need to be willing to do is just state their argument and maybe back up their argument. And maybe reiterate like why they think what they think. It's not always about changing someone's mind. It's not always about coming up with a better argument. It's not always about right or wrong. It's sometimes just about ideas. And we can talk about ideas. And until we can sit down and come up with good ideas and make solutions, some people are simply settling for making the other person on the other side of the argument into a villain, making them seem like they're advocating an evil position. Therefore, they themselves might be evil. And that's a horrendous way to have adult discussion about the things that are going on in our society. I realize this echoes of an episode I did a few weeks back, basically where I said disagreement does not a racist make. And this does kind of reiterate that same point. It continues down the same roads, the things we've been talking about, the things I've been talking about, and hopefully you've been graciously listening to. Now, I've had online arguments with friends, and I assume they're still my friends. I haven't heard from anybody yet saying we're no longer friends. I think actually you're a racist, or you're too liberal. And what's so funny is I've had both. I've had conversations with people that are like, what, are you kidding me? It needs to be more like I'm being too liberal. And then I'm having conversations where I'm clearly being too conservative. So I figured I'm right where I should be with these arguments. And so this whole idea of having a discussion and keeping it civil seems to be lost on people. Like, you begin to just say things into an argument that are like, they start to get extreme. And the problem is this is being echoed throughout the inputs we get from our voices, right? The voices that are speaking most loudly to us are often refined. I mean, literally, if you look at the way your social media feeds are constructed, right, and the algorithms that feed you information, and I purposely have to go in and push back and make sure that I'm going and looking for information from both sides of the arguments to see if I'm a crazy person, to see if I'm missing something, because your algorithms will start to feed you whatever you've looked at most recently, right? They'll start feeding you more information, ticking you down that same rabbit hole through the same echo chamber, just assuring you that you are the most correct person that you know. Because you think like all of these voices around you, and unfortunately, there's too much of that. We don't go looking for other information. And we see it with the media. We see it through social media. We see certainly with our dear friends in Washington, D.C. They are in the business of vilification. They are in the wholesale image creation of the other side being villainous, right? They are the bad guys. We are the good guys. Ask any politician. Most of them will agree. Like I said, there are some out there that are willing to stand in the middle and go, you know what? No, it's not true. The other side's not a bunch of villains. Our side's not villains. We're trying to work towards solutions. But every time you watch a bill being proposed on on the floor of the House or on the floor of the Senate, all you ever see is this bickering back and forth about oh, I swear, and they're just getting these emotional arguments just to oh, how dare you, and you, how dare you, and you're just, oh, and they talk over one another, and it's no wonder we can't get crap done in our country because they just want to score points like it's high school debate class. And I want to scream. And sometimes I scream in my head at the TV going, are you freaking morons serious? Like this is the best our country can do? Is you two idiots screaming at each other from your R seat and your D seat, screaming, trying to score high school debate points to see who will like you better and get likes later on social media. And their followers, that's all they do. Click, 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 click. We like. This is our guy, and he's right, and the other guy's wrong. And it's you bunch of morons. We need to push back. When you see your representative on a committee arguing like that, not seeking solution, just pointing out all the wrong things that aren't okay and how bad the other people are and how they're friends. I love it that they call each other. They're good friends across the aisle. Recently, there was a video going around between Matt Gaetz and I can't remember the other congressman's name. Is a black congressman, and they were arguing. And Matt Gaetz just got apoplectic over this. Are you calling me? You're calling me racist? How dare you? And he's it's dude, you're not even helping the situation go forward. And both of them just started getting indignant with one another. And it's this is why we're not getting anything done. Because we have a bunch of children sitting in Washington, D.C. who are willing to take offense over the smallest things, the smallest inference, and they want to make that the issue, and that's not the issue. They're too busy making villains out of one another to get anything done. And this is I go back again a couple episodes. This is my concern over why we're spending time spinning wheels over symbolic things when we're not making real change in areas where the black community actually really needs help, needs adjustment, needs reform, needs reconstruction. We need to do things about the systems, not the statues. Get rid of the statues when we're down. Get those. I don't even want to get into that because I'm hung up on this, and I feel everyone's no, the statues are so important. I'm telling you, you mark my words. When it comes back around, I'm receipts. I got receipts. When the politicians we took the statues out, what more do you want? Oh, we want to make real change, but we can't make real change because the other side are villains. And they won't let us. They're obstructionists. They're bad. But you know what? If you vote for us and vote for our party, then we'll make sure next time we'll get it done. 2 years, 4 years down the road. Oh, did you get it done? No. We still couldn't because we couldn't quite. There were other priorities. Blah, blah, blah. And the reforms and the changes needed in the black community just one more time get kicked further down the road, handed off to the next bunch of politicians, and then they're trained on how to make it an issue, but not an issue worth solving. Meanwhile, the community right now is prepped to make real change, to get behind real change, but they want to stand up in Washington D.C. just argue over. And so anyway, I don't want to get too far down that road because I don't want to take a bunch of time tonight. It's already late, and I realize you're but I can watch this anytime I want. And you can, but at some point I want to go to bed because, sleep is good for an old man like myself. So here we are, right? So media, social media, our dear friends, right? In the, in the Capitol up there, they're all on the vilifying bandwagon. It's starting to leak into culture, and we're taking cue from that, and that's becoming the way that we start to deal with other people that we don't like. They're not seeing it our way. Now, again, like I said, most of the conversations that I've had online, because hey, who doesn't love a good online argument with your friends? It stays pretty civil. No one's name calling. No one's oh my gosh, you're an idiot. You're a moron. It's generally a continual attempt to try to make people understand where I'm coming from, where they're coming from. We're continually working through these issues. Sometimes we get nowhere, and that's okay. We're still working on it. It's still a conversation, and that is more of what we need. More honest conversation, more dialogue, less silence, less gosh, I'm telling you, I hate to be the voice that keeps saying, I get tired of being told, right, well, we need to just be quiet and listen and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, this is not the time for that, because the message is confusing, for one, because even in the, like, again, I keep coming back around to this, even in the black community, everyone's like, well, the black community says, which ones? Because if you're only listening to one set of voices, again, think of your social media algorithms feeding you the information that it wants to, then only this sliver of black voices is getting to your ear, and you think all of them are right, and that's what's being fed to you, right? If we look across social media right now, people are pumping out things that come from a very small, select group that have somehow been elected the arbiters of all things that are, quote unquote, black. Yet you have voices that range from progressive liberal to moderate liberal to centrist to moderate conservative to very conservative to libertarian black voices out there. And somehow, like, those voices, even inside the community, if it doesn't match up with the right narrative, and I mean not the right, like, politically right, but the correct narrative, then, right, villain. That's not the right black voice. That's not the correct black voice to listen to, because it doesn't say the things that, other black people are saying. Well, okay, maybe because black people don't groupthink. And if you assume that black people groupthink, then you're just as racist as someone hanging a Confederate flag on their front porch. Did you ever stop? Did it ever stop to, like, actually drop into your mind that the black community is just as diverse in their opinions, their tastes, their understandings as any other community? And to think otherwise is inherently racist. Like, it is inherently racist. Like, that is a quantifiable racist trait. If you think that they only think one way, black people only think one way, or Latino people only think one way, right? Or Asian people only think one way. Like, the minute we lump a group into this group category because we think that that's what's supposed to be, that is like, by textbook definition, racist. Because you're assigning a stereotypical quality based on the color of someone's skin. So let's just be honest, right? We're trying our best to understand. We're all trying to move forward. I'm not saying that everyone out there is racist, but I'm just saying, like, we got to be careful when we start saying, well, you got to listen to black voices. Which ones, right? And if you're not listening to the correct black voices, then here we go. And this is where I'm saying, like, this is when it becomes, like, borderline. We're like, oh, you're a villain then. You're a villain. No, listen to the correct black voices, right? And it's in all of these different areas, and I see it across media, right? Oh, you love liberty and you're a patriot? You love our country? You're a racist. You're a villain. You're a villain, right? You want to see equality and justice for the black community? You're a villain. It's like, whoa, what? And why would I say that? Because that's how I'm telling you, both sides, they make villains out of people on the other side of the argument. If you press too hard against their preferred narrative, you become a villain, and therefore you're advocating for the wrong thing. Your position is somehow evil. And it's hard to think, right? It's hard to wrap your mind around, like, how would someone think that wanting equality and justice for the black community is evil? Because it makes you a liberal, or maybe makes you a Marxist, or whatever they want to label you as. So there's a problem there, right? Here's one of my favorites, and this is probably one of the hardest things, I think, where most people that are probably sitting firmly in the middle are trying to wrap their heads around. What if you think Black Lives actually matter, but you think maybe there's a problem with the organization, the BLM organization, maybe not the best vehicle to get to the point of, like, making sure Black Lives matter? Racist, villain, awful, horrible person. How could you think that? Because as an organization, there are questions and issues, and disagreeing with an organization doesn't mean you disagree with a tenet. And that's the problem when we have organizations naming themselves after a tenet, right? I believe, as a tenet of humanity, Black Lives Matter. I believe that. Black Lives Matter. I don't even have to qualify it. Black Lives Matter. Period. I believe that. So to say that, but then say, I question some of the underpinnings of the BLM organization and what they're about and what they're trying to accomplish, the approaches they're trying to take, I don't think those are all good. Then what? So, villain, bad person, because you don't want to just swallow the cow to get the steak. Like that's the kind of like the theory, right? You disagree, right? Black conservative, villain. You got questions? You're questioning things? You're probably a villain too. You just don't know it yet, but we're going to make sure you know it. Like this is where we're headed. And how do we know and see this? Because when people question the things that are going on around them, they're often just told to shut up and step back, and they don't have a right to speak. So when it comes to issues like, we're talking about the things that are happening that are like kind of ripping apart the seams. And in some ways it's good. Like some of this needs to happen so that we can all take a look. Like everyone, like we need to peel, but it's like I don't know, like ripping off a Band-Aid, or I hate to say like, peeling off a scab. That's gross. Oh. But I'm just saying like there needs to be an examination of the wounds that are that are part of where our country has been, come from, and come through. But if we're all going to look and ask questions and have conversations, then we have to stop this nonsense where people questioning and asking the wrong questions are somehow not allowed to come to the table, and they're vilified for it. And we need to stop the wholesale vilification of anything that is from a time period. Okay? I like this is just abjectly dishonest. Okay? Let's start with some things that have gone through this already. Oh, the Susan B. Anthony flag, right? The flag that flew for our country during the Revolutionary War is inherently racist. Did you know that? Yeah, you probably didn't know that because it's not. It has nothing to do with racism. It has everything to do with the 13 colonies that were fighting for independence from a tyrannous monarchy across the Atlantic Ocean. That's what it has to do with. Was slavery happening then? Yes. Yes, it was. Have we learned throughout history now? Slavery, bad, right? Atrocities committed to uphold slavery, bad. The Revolutionary War was not an atrocity committed to uphold slavery. I don't care what the 1619 Project says. You can go Google that, and you can start looking at the historians and the historical society across this country of every stripe, creed, and color have come out and said that is a flawed project historically. Deeply flawed. There's an entire group of black historians called the 1776 Project that I've called into question everything that project, the 1619 Project, stands for. Everything that they have pointed at and tried to rewrite into history, the 1776 Project, black historians have said, nah, there's the real problems with what they've said and done. And even the New York Times has had to write retractions on some of the assertions that have been made. But this is the kind of wholesale stuff, when you question it, you become vilified, because you're not seeing and saying the right things. You're saying, oh, this. So no, the Revolutionary War and the Betsy Ross flag, right? The flag with the circle with the 13 stars representing the 13 colonies that were in the Revolutionary War is not a racist icon. It's the first national flag of our country. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that flag is incredibly inspiring in what it stands for as far as the fight against tyranny. And gosh dang it, then why not appropriate it into something that is meaningful to fight against any kind of tyranny now? Why is that solely a one-sided issue? I don't understand these things. Like, rather than just saying, you know what, well, it stood for that, then we're going to make sure it stands for this now. Like, then it stood over and stood alongside of, or stood in the midst of, or while that, like, this war was being fought, slavery was happening. Yeah, we acknowledge that. We know that. We understand that. We've learned that it was bad. We fought an entire war to put an end to it. And it doesn't mean it's done by any means. It doesn't mean we don't have more work to do, and a lot more work to do. But what I'm saying is we can't just vilify something out of an era because also slavery was going on. Because if we do that, like that becomes like the litmus test by which we view history, then all of history prior to 1970 is awful, and we just need to do away with anything that comes before then. God, that leaves us with disco, people. Come on. Really? You want disco to be the first good thing about history? I mean, how atrocious was disco? Come on, work with me here, please. This is what I'm getting at. Like these ideas of like we start vilifying everything and anything, and this is how we end up with the statue of Ulysses S. Grant, who was a president, was the Union general who led the Union Army in the Civil War to emancipate slaves, to end U.S. slavery. He won that war and was a U.S. president, was eulogized. Oh my gosh. I just like these kind of things started getting me just like, it just was eulogized by Frederick Douglass, saying he was one of the truest friends that the black man had ever seen. And they ripped his statue down in San Francisco because he's from that era, and people, I guess, are morons. They don't read before they tear it down. Again, I'm fine saying, listen, if you want to tear down statues of Confederate generals because they fought for the other side, they betrayed the nation, I get that. And I can get behind that as a priority. I'm like, it's questionable to me. It's questionable. I wouldn't say no, don't ever. I'm saying as a priority, I feel like there are other things, again, we can focus on. I get in trouble because everyone's like, well, why wouldn't you just do both? Because I don't think we have unlimited resources as a country. Right? We don't have unlimited resources. We can't just print more money. We're just going to start raising taxes on everybody. And then everyone's like, it's like, okay, if everyone's happy for that, then great, fine. We'll get behind it. I just think as a priority, it lacks. We can do other things. So I don't even want to have to rehash that argument. But you tear down that, right? You turn on the statue of George Washington, who was the first president who wouldn't take power until voted in and then gave up power willingly when they voted someone else. Like, he never wanted to be a monarch. And from what I've read through history was, yes, he owned slaves, but he was also like one of the most benevolent slave owners in that time. Like, he was investing in education for the slaves he owned. And I get that slavery is an atrocity. I get that like, again, but when we just vilify, and we tear down, that it means that nothing good ever came of anything in this country before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And even then, that's questionable. So we start moving forward. We have to like come forward 10 years before we start seeing movement there. And it's like, this is what we do. We just keep creating villains. Old white guy, probably a villain. Does that make me a villain? Probably to somebody. I guess it does. I just think that's a huge non-starter for conversation. It's a huge non-starter for healing, for bringing people together. It's not a way to move forward. It's a way to continue to drive at divisions because we just continue to vilify everybody. And we start looking for villains in every little nook and cranny and corner. And then once we see that there possibly is a wrong thing, we it's like a dog, a rabid dog on a bone. Like, we won't let it go. We're going to figure out we're going to make sure this villainy goes to the extreme, and we're going to make sure that the person pays for it and that everything about them is changed and that anything in history is rewritten and they're made out to be the most evil person that ever came. But what happens when we get to the people that we know did good, that we know stood and fought the good fight and made good change, and even in their flaws, They still contributed to the greater good of humanity. Do we just vilify them as well? Do we it's hard for me to extract myself from the thought that I don't see it leading anywhere good when we just keep creating and manufacturing villainy throughout history. When there were actual villains throughout history. Actual villains throughout history. So I could sit here and I could pontificate, but I don't need to spend all that time. I'm going to make a shorter episode tonight. I'm just thinking, there's a video I saw the other day, and I will try and find the link, and I'll make sure it's posted in the notes in the notes section in the description. And it was a video that showed. I can't remember if it's on Instagram or Twitter or probably Instagram, because most of the stuff my wife showed me this video, and it showed a woman getting out of an Uber, going into her house, sitting down, starting to watch TV, and kind of relaxing into her evening. And then all of a sudden she hears noise out front, and she goes to the blinds and she pokes the blinds open, and she sees her neighbor who's running after a car, and he's wearing a Make America Great Again, right? A MAGA hat, like the red hat, Make America Great Again hat. And of course, that's the ultimate sign of villainy right there in the current age. And he's wearing the MAGA hat, and he's running after the car saying, all right, go, keep going, go, keep going. And she catches it on video, that part of it. And she's like, oh my gosh, my racist neighbor just chased my black Uber driver out of our neighborhood. What the hell is going on in this world? And then, of course, she posts it to social media. She posts it to YouTube. She posts it all over the place. And it just shows the view counters and the clicks and the comments and all these things going on. And like harkening back to that episode I talked about, like, the labels don't help, right? Just people like finding out who he is, finding him on the map, finding out where he works, trying to get him fired, like all of these different things. And then it dials back to before it all happened, because it was snowing outside in the video. And in the background you hear, right, and you hear tires just rubbing on the pavement, like, just rubbing on the pavement. And this guy wakes up and he hears it, and he looks out and he sees the Uber car, right, the Uber driver in his car, and he's stuck, can't get any traction in the snow. So he goes and he gets his clothes, he gets his boots in the middle of the night, right? He goes and he gets himself dressed and he puts his hat on, and it's a MAGA hat. And he goes out and he goes to the window and he says, hey, is everything all right? Hey, I'm going to try and give you a push. And he pushes the car out of the ditch, or out of the snow. He helps him push the car out of the snow, gets him going down the road, and that's what he's chasing. Like, just stay on the gas. Keep going. Go, 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 go. And that's the bigger picture of the story. And the point is being made that we're oftentimes being fed pieces of the picture that don't always add up. And that's to both sides, right? That's to both ends. Both political parties do it. All the narrative-based 24-hour news cycle media, they do that. And they've been caught doing it. They've been busted doing it. And they are unapologetic about it. And they just keep on going because no one really seems to care. They just want to sell you the narrative that will keep you coming back, that will keep you loaded for bear and fighting the fight they want you to fight. And so I would say, if we're going to continue moving forward as a society, you and we have to be willing to dig deeper, to look a little harder, to examine a little further. And I realize there are so much going on out there that is difficult. That's not simple. That's not just playing on your phone, lazing around the house. It's not, right? It's going to carve some time. But if you want to put something in your brain that's not just what's being fed to you by the news outlets and their bias, and I'm telling you, if you say they're not, I don't even know that we can be friends. Because there's bias on both sides of the 24-hour news cycle, and it's clear as day. Right? If you don't want to go out and look online, if you don't want to go out and find some independent news sources, if you don't want to go and look through multiple articles about the same thing, then it's probably not for you. But you got to know that you're limiting yourself as to what you're putting out there, and then you're using that information. If you're using that information to create villains, you're shooting your own fight in the foot, right? You're starting at a deficit immediately. If we want to see change, if we want to see things get better, then we have to do better, and we have to approach with honest intent and real willingness to hear, to offer, to not get crazy mad about people that disagree with us, not be offended anytime anyone points out, I don't think this is the best argument, here's why. Now, if someone just comes up and says to you, hey, that's a stupid argument, and walks away, Okay, that's bad confrontation, and they're not looking in good faith to help understand. Now, if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I don't know that what you're saying is the best argument. Here's why I think that. It looks like this, that, or the other." They can like reason with you. Then you should engage and reason with that person. See if you can learn something. See if they can learn something. If we approach like that, then I think it's better for everybody. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this, but man, I see a lot of people out on social media, they're willing to throw their opinions out there. And then the minute you question it, they get mad at you for how you question it, the way you question it, and don't like your opinions. And then they're mad at you because you offended them because you questioned their opinion. And it's like, it's social media. You put an opinion out in public. I read it. I'm offering a counter argument. I didn't say you were stupid. I didn't call you a name. I didn't go on the ad hominem attack calling you anything. I just said, hey, right? There's a problem. What about this? Did you think about this? What about this angle? How about that? If we can do that, we can offer into the conversation, then we're winning. But the more we just take our opinions, hold them as owned, hold them as infallible, because, they're my opinion and I feel that way. Okay, it's time to grow up. It really is time to grow up. And we can no longer offer that as an argument. Well, I feel that way. No. If we're going to make solutions, if we're going to walk forward, we have to have a balance of objective fact. And we have to approach that fact in kindness. We have to approach that fact with empathy, equity, compassion, all of those things, right? We've got to do that. But we can't just say, nope, don't give me your facts or your logic because I feel like my opinion matters because it's how I feel. Okay, well, feelings will not find us a way out of this. Feelings will not make structural change. Because if the structural change doesn't feel right, even though it's the only logical way to make the change, then we're just stuck in a circle of, right, doing nothing. So we've got to do better at how we discuss. We've got to do better at how we approach. We've got to do better in not making everyone out to be a villain. We've got to hold to account people that are doing crazy, dumb, destructive things. We need leaders to stand up and say enough is enough. Stop pulling down statues. Stop defacing all the things in the world that you think because you're making bad choices. I'm waiting for that. I really want to see that. I'm waiting for that to happen. So, with that said, I know I'm offering imperfect solutions because I'm just a flawed guy into the conversation. But that's all I can offer. Like there's I don't know if there is a perfect solution, but man, it's going to take lots of ideas and lots of discussion to land on something that will really work. Actually, next episode, I'm going to bring up something that I've seen online that I think we need to get some traction behind because I think, man, it could really be a game changer when it comes to the idea of police reform and justice reform. So this could be, I think, big idea, and I think more people need to get on board. So I'm going to offer an actual solution next episode coming up. But in the meantime, I'm Jay the Greg. We need to continue to do better. Be better neighbors, friends, family members. Be kind. Engage in conversation, even spirited conversation. It's fine. It's okay. Do it in love. Do it with the attempt to grow and help others grow and learn yourself. If we can do that, we can be better. Once again, Jay the Greg, you've been grayed out.